welcome to Arts Express. This is Prairie Miller, and on the show, I'm ready for my close-up. Pacifica host Carla Nixon on the patron saints of the Empire at the funeral and resurrection of Lindsey Graham, or maybe two of them.
Lindsey Graham has bought the farm. They're going to find another Lindsey Graham. Hello, Garland Nixon here. So let's get rolling. At any rate, so what's happening? We get to the fact that Lindsey Graham, a man who represents U.S. foreign policy, he was a caricature of what, I'll put it like this. He was a visible caricature of U.S. foreign policy, right? He really was. When we look at him, we are disgusted by him, right? We're revolted by looking at him, like you're smelling a dead fish, because he just screams murder, 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 kill, 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 wipe out, wipe out, wipe out, right? Nuke, attack. He, as I believe, as a extremely compromised person, just went around arguing for more war, more escalation, more murder, more killing. That was his job. That was his job, and he did his job well. No matter what, his job was to call for more escalation. It wasn't rational. It wasn't irrational. That was his position. And, of course, a J.D. Vance, who pretends to be some kind of an anti-war schlub. Oh, yeah, I'm opposed to war, right? When he was in Congress and he gets in and he's like, yeah, war, let's do it. This is the right thing to do, right? So you've got Bernie, Mamdani, they put them in positions. You've got, from the so-called conservatives, you've got a Vance. He's supposed to be the anti-war thing, that he's in the system, but he's involved in the war, but he doesn't really want to support it. He's reluctantly. Don't you love that one? The one who reluctantly supports the war. Okay, that's him. And then you got Lindsey Graham. His job is to be on the other side. When you see somebody so much of a caricature, so over the top, you know that they are a paid actor, as it were. His job. We don't get mad in a way at Lindsey Graham. That would be like watching a movie. You know what? I've heard people watch movies and they see some actor who's a really good villain. He's a really good villain. And they say, I didn't like that actor after that. Why? Because he was so mean and whatever, Gone with the Wind. And I'm like, perhaps you didn't realize that was a movie and that this person was an actor. But that's the way the brain works, unfortunately. The brain can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy. The brain can't do that, and they take advantage of that. So the same person who watches a movie and then hates the actor afterwards, right? Or we watch these movies and we see an actor or actress, and you're like, wow, that person's really cool. And later on you find out they're just like 1,000,000% pro-Zionist, and they're going out saying, kill all the Palestinian children. And you're like, hey, but I watched this. It's so difficult for me. Why, she's always so nice in the movies. They're an actress. And Americans are like, yeah, but I watch her movies. I see her show every week, and she seems like such a kind, gentle mother. And she's a school teacher. She ain't a school teacher. She's playing a role. Don't like her, don't dislike her, based on the act, the roles that she plays. But that's Americans. But doesn't that also apply to Lindsey Graham? I don't love him. I don't hate him. I hate the role that he played. I don't know him. But anybody who will do that, who will accept that role, has to be kind of inherently not just evil is not the word. I think the word is amoral, apathetic about morality, apathetic about good and evil, unattached to the concepts of good and evil. He is just an actor, and he played his role well. And I suspect that he was highly compromised, and that helped to influence. Go say this, and he seemed to take great joy in that. But the whether that was his personal role, whether he was that thing or not, is irrelevant, because the political class, the ruling elite, they need certain people. If you're going to have a movie, don't you need a villain and a hero? Don't you need kind of anti-villains and anti-heroes? The villain who's bad, but you ask yourself, but philosophically he's right, but what he's doing is wrong. Things like that. These people who are villains, and you think he's a villain, but he's kind of right about society. This guy's a hero, but he's a jerk and he's not a good guy, right? And at some point, you're confused about the anti-villain or anti-hero. That's what they give you. That's J.D. Vance particularly. And then some guy's just the pure villain. And that's all Lindsey Graham was in this great scene, in the scene, the final scene of U.S. imperialism. That's it. So now I suspect this. What happens? I remember what you have the Cosby Show when they replaced the mother. It was Felicia Rashad or something. They replaced her with somebody else, I believe. How many movies, how many TV shows have they been? They've replaced that. Look, a hero dies, a villain dies, the wife dies, the kid dies, the dog died. They can replace them all. They're replaceable because it's an act. And so now that Lindsey Graham has bought the farm, they're going to find another Lindsey Graham. Do not be misled. His job, his role must be played. And they will find someone else, maybe two. And their job will be able to run out. They got Tom Cotton. They can elevate him. They got other people in the Republican Party whose voice they can elevate to scream day and night, kill more, bomb more, attack more, assassinate more, love Israel no matter what they do, support them. They have a right to kill everybody. We need more money for weapons and less for people. They will. How hard is it for them to find another person? They got them already in the queue, shall we say. And all they got to do is bring another one to the forefront. And that's what happens next. So Lindsey Graham, we can celebrate his death, as they say, but his role will not go unfilled. Understand that. And so when you understand that, the politics of personality, Trump drops dead tomorrow, his role will be fulfilled. All of these people running around here, Trump did this, Trump did that. Trump did what he was told, and that should be obvious by now. Yes, he lied about everything, but he was told to lie about everything. Look, what did Trump do? He was a TV guy. What did Zelensky do? He was an actor. You think that's an accident? You think that's why you think perhaps me using a metaphor of actors and playing roles is appropriate when you've got Trump, who was a TV guy, and Zelensky, who was an actor? Think that's an accident? These people were accustomed to playing the crowd, brother. They know how to play the crowd. And that's all they're doing now. They're playing the crowd. Zelensky, he only has a few lines. Give me more. I need more weapons. More. Putin bad. We will give up no ground. Crimea must be ours. He says the same roles over and over. He's like one of those old G.I. Joes or Barbies where they had a string and they pull a string. Need more weapons. Putin is evil. We will give up no ground. Crimea must be returned. That's all he is. You can get a monkey to do that. And effectively, they have got a cocaine-filled monkey to do that. So we can hate or like him. He is the system's representative for that role. That's all I'm getting at. And what did we see? Look, okay, let me throw this out at you. We see all of the goose stepping going on around Ukraine, right? Every time you turn around, there's another tiki torch march with a bunch of people wearing the iconography of the Third Reich, goose stepping around somewhere in holding up a flag. Now, they ain't doing it so much now because they're hiding, because they'll be grabbed and thrown to the front, sent to the front to be incinerated. But we see that the names of the roads are Banderites and Nazis, that Ukraine has really, the Nazi ideology has been inculcated into its society, right? I mean, just the most foundational part of the Ukraine culture is hating Russians and supporting the Third Reich, reminiscing about it, celebrating the legacy of those who aligned with the Third Reich. That's it. Celebrate the legacy of those who align with the Third Reich. Now, the people who ostensibly run, let's just say, who occupy high positions in their proxy countries, visited the U.S. And they came in, really, the two schlubs came in to D.C. so that McCain, Lindsey Graham, these guys are neocon saints. They're representative of the neocon ideology, which is U.S. foreign policy. So when they die, they must be worshipped at the highest level. Everyone who is part of the empire, of course, came in because they are the patron saints of the empire. They're the ones who define the foreign policy of the empire. And so people who are executing that foreign policy have to come in. Oh, great saints. Oh, great popes of the empire, of the foreign, brutal, violent, vicious, thieving foreign policy of the empire. Oh, it's wonderful to see you. We must stand up and worship you as a deity. That's my job. And then I'll go back. Oh, by the way, before I leave, can I have some more missiles? We must fight Russia. That's what you got to do before you leave. And then Netanyahu has to put on a little show. Come on. He knew the cameras were on him. Let's not be too. We see all these pictures and he's like talking to Hegseth or somebody. That was acting. He probably wasn't even saying nothing. He's like, guys, are you ready? Yeah. Everybody ready? Yeah. And on 3, on my count. And 3, 2, 1. Let's go. 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, 4, 5 potato, 6 potato, 7 potato, more. Blah, blah, blah. Did you get that? Is that on the camera? Yeah, it looks like I'm telling them what to do. Yeah, now everybody's going to go on Twitter now, and they're going to say, did you see the video of Netanyahu pointing and talking and doing this? And we're all going to talk about it. Yes. Did you see the video? Oh, my God. Netanyahu was giving people orders, and he was singing his part of. Yeah, that's just as if he has to do that. As if, like, they're all, not everything's already set. He came there to give them their order. Come on. Come on. You could, or I could do that. Here's the plan, Garland. On my mark at the time, you want to do this, and you want to look at certain people, and you want to just look stern, okay? Remember, look stern, okay? Almost, you know what it reminds me of? They probably the same guy that came up with Biden when he was on stage, and he couldn't find him. Remember, Biden couldn't find him. He was all confused about which way to go on stage. Same thing. Same thing. But he was confused. Now, Biden actually was confused. He really was. They were like, okay, you finished your talk. What do you do, Biden? The guy basically went spastic. He had some kind of like, he seemed to be having some kind of conniption, for God's sake. And now, there we go. So now we can talk about the fraud of what's going on. But the bottom line is this. Unless we act on our best behalf, unless we understand that we are dealing with a political class that don't represent us. Their job is to represent the ruling elite and the oligarchs and to somehow dissipate, to somehow mitigate the anger and frustration that we have against these powerful oligarchs. That's it. They're there on their behalf. They're there to say, I'm the peace president, vote for me, bring me in and I'll give you everything you want, and turn to the oligarchs and say, I think the suckers bought it. You think the suckers bought it, Trump? Yeah, hope and change. I'm with her. Build back better. Big, beautiful bill. You know what I mean? I mean, come on. These are focus group tested propaganda lines. Hope and change. I'm with her. Big, beautiful bill. America first. MAGA. They even got hats, red hats with white letters. How good is that? They need to put a little tip of blue in there, though. I would have threw a little bit of blue in that red and white, but it doesn't matter because the suckers are gonna buy it. Make America. There we go. Make America great again. Oh, isn't that just wonderful? I don't know. I like hope and change. I'm with her, not so much. Big, beautiful. Think about this. They like kind of mock you. They kind of mock you. What do you think? Well, we're gonna go from Build Back Better to Big Beautiful Bill. Oh my gosh, the suckers, boy. We got them, don't we? Isn't that hilarious? I ain't laughing. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Got to run. Thanks a lot. I'm out.
And coming up next on Arts Express.
Roy Cohn was the reason my parents were convicted and executed. The last place I saw your grandparents was Sing Sing. Going to Sing Sing is a way of connecting to that 10-year-old. I read The Judgment of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, and there was a reference to Roy Cohn, and I'd already heard about him because of McCarthy.
To call Roy Cohn evil, it's true. but it doesn't explain 100 other things about him.
Every era has an opportunist, somebody who will stretch the law and ethics to make the ends justify the means.
Roy knew how to get permits taken care of, unions to do your bidding, the mafia to leave you alone.
He would do whatever he needed to win.
I found out one thing in life. Don't ever threaten unless you intend to follow through.
That is how to wield power.
Donald Trump, he said, you stand up to the establishment. Can I come see you?
The whole point was to resist. Never admit that you're wrong. Trump fell in love with that.
On talk shows, he's nerdy and creepy.
He wanted to make himself this indispensable power broker, sort of like the original fixer.
What do you say to people who say you ruin people's lives?
I say name one.
And those were scenes from the Ivy Meeropol directed Bully Coward documentary, The Story of Roy Cohn, the late Donald Trump lawyer and confidant who engineered the conviction and execution of Meeropol's grandparents during the Red Scare back then, persecuted as communists Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, and which very personally led Meeropol on the direct path to her latest film, Ask E. Jean, tracking the successful $5 million+ lawsuit brought by the SNL Award-nominated comedy writer E. Jean Carroll, apparently still being litigated and relitigated for sexual abuse and defamation against Donald Trump. And Meeropol, our guest on the show, in a conversation about all that and more, her horror witnessing Trump's new McCarthyism sweeping the country once again, and including the current government witch hunt against BAI hosts at Breakthrough News Radio and the Gray Zone host Max Blumenthal. First, some scenes from Ask E. Jean, then Ivy Meeropol.
There's no such thing as destiny, dear listener. We ourselves make our lives. All the time I'm writing, and then I write this little quiz and Esquire buys it. All my dreams were about becoming an advice columnist. And then Roger Ailes gave me my own TV show.
You don't really care who comments on anything because, you comment on everything.
If you were concerned about being dragged through the mud, why would you choose to sue Donald Trump?
Because he called me a liar, and I couldn't let it stand.
I called you right after the attack.
I was very disappointed that you wouldn't report him.
They never would have believed me.
You were more famous than he was.
Here comes this huge attorney, Robbie Kaplan. She laid out the case. If women could see what kind of questions their fellow woman is asked when she brings charges against a powerful man.
Were you wearing underwear? Did you wear a bra? Are you taking any medications or drugs? Have you ever had acting classes?
No.
There was some darkness coming in.
We were prepping for the second trial, and Robbie said, the man you have not seen in 30 years is going to be in that courtroom.
E. Jean Carroll had the guts to face him down twice.
Days before trial, I had an actual breakdown. I lost my ability to speak. I lost my words. I couldn't talk, and I couldn't go on. That's how frightened I was. But oddly, we went into court. Robbie took the lectern. I sat in the witness chair, and she said, Miss Carroll, good morning. Would you please spell your name for the court? And amazingly, I looked out, and he was nothing. He was nothing. He was a phantom. It was the people around him who were giving him power. He himself was nothing. It was an astonishing discovery for me. He's nothing. We don't need to be afraid of him.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, Ivy Meeropol, and welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Okay, what was it about E. Jean Carroll that inspired you to direct, co-write, and produce this both public and personal documentary about her?
Well, it started out with I simply had read an excerpt from a book that she had written called What Do We Need Men For? And it was published in New York Magazine in June of 2019. And that was the article that kind of broke the news that she had been assaulted by Donald Trump in the Bergdorf Goodman dressing room. Now, we had already heard that 26 other women, E. Jean at that point was the 27th woman, I believe, with making claims that Donald Trump had assaulted them. And so it wasn't that so much as it was the way that E. Jean told her story. I felt that I hadn't heard that kind of unapologetic, very honest voice talking about assault and rape, because she, this had been the end of the Me Too period. Well, not the end, but it had been kind of pronounced the end, and we'd had this whole wave of which had inspired E. Jean herself to come forward. And I just felt we hadn't heard someone. I hadn't heard a voice. I had not heard a voice like hers before. And so that intrigued me enough to start digging into her past and her career, which was fascinating, and felt like there might be something there that could, would an entire feature film could support. But I really didn't know much about her before that.
And how would you say this is a documentary, in a sense, at the same time about both of you and the political trauma both of you have faced personally? You've been quoted as saying, or it's been quoted, the woman behind E. Jean Carroll, quote, "I love revenge, I will say that."
Oh gosh, that I have to say that journalist took that out of context. I don't I do love revenge stories. I have this I grew up kind of, watching films with my father, where it's like where and just kind of, but not really I'm not motivated by that. I don't feel I did not reach out to E. Jean Carroll or spend 6 years struggling to make a film about her and getting it out against all odds because I have some revenge fantasy towards Donald Trump or Roy Cohn, if that's what we're talking about here. I made a whole film about Roy Cohn that actually tried to understand the man and not just paint him as pure evil. I guess what I'm saying is E. Jean was not, I was interested in E. Jean. I was not interested in taking down Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump is part of the story, but he's just one man in a world of really misogynistic, and I do not feel that this story is only about E. Jean versus Donald Trump. It's a bigger story, and I wouldn't have spent all that time on it if I didn't feel that way. So my personal connection to story, I think I'm inspired by people who really stand up and and fight back against bullies and are seeking justice. And I'm inspired by that, and I wanted to be around it. And it wasn't just E. Jean, it's Robbie Kaplan, it's the whole legal team. It's the bravery of people like Carol Martin and Lisa Birnbach, who are her dear friends, who also stuck their necks out to tell the truth.
And concerning the sexual assault conviction against Trump, what are your thoughts about what may be perceived in his thought process as predatory rape language, though not indictable, certainly, but offering a clue as to when he said about possibly invading Cuba, quote, "Whether I free it, take it, I can do anything I want with it." Or about Greenland, he said he will take it one way or the other as rape language.
Yeah, very interesting. I haven't thought about that, but it makes a lot of sense. I think he is someone who just takes what he wants and doesn't care about the repercussions, doesn't care who it hurts. It's it's constant control, constant domination. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very consistent with his the language he uses. I mean, he spent, the one of his biggest defenses with the Eugene case was that she's not his type. And me, that is such a, he basically, by saying she's not his type over and over and over again, to me, he's admitting that if she were, he may have done it. So there's all this. Speaking of language, I think we can read between the lines, and we can recognize that he is someone who absolutely he is telling us who he is. We heard it in the Access Hollywood tape. We see it, like you're saying, we hear it all the time in his language and how he attacks people, how he speaks to women, what he thinks of women. I think he's told us for a long time exactly who he is, and too many of us were not listening.
Mm. And what went into your decision to let E. Jean tell her own story throughout the film, rather than inserting yourself as an investigative filmmaker?
I found, because E. Jean has such a strong voice herself, her writer's voice, but her also in person, and just who she is as a quite eccentric but just powerful, strong personality. I found pretty early on, I kind of decided I wasn't going to interview other people about E. Jean. Typically, like a profile potentially like this, there were countless people I could have talked to who would have said things about her. But I really wanted this to be the experience. I wanted the audience to fully experience E. Jean in a more unfiltered way. And I mean, obviously it's filtered through me and my filmmaking team. But once I got a hold specifically of the video depositions, where we have the absolute privilege of seeing and watching E. Jean go through the process of being deposed and having to tell that story, and being challenged over and over again by Trump's attorney, Alina Habba, to kind of defend her life, her lifestyle, I just felt very strongly that I had the material to have her kind of narrate her own story with the audiobooks, where we hear her own voice reading her written work, and then the interviews with her. So it was just such a it was such a rich, deep, kind of archive that I could mine, and you can see her at all these different stages of her life, including the Ask E. Jean show, which I also didn't know existed till I started digging in.
And what were your own impressions of Trump in court? And were there any surprises or revelations for you in that regard?
Well, so I was not in court when Trump was in court as well. I actually was not even making the film at that point. We weren't allowed to film in the courtroom or record audio. And I did attend much of the first trial, but I was not there for when he was in court himself. But I heard a lot of reports, including from E. Jean herself, about how he behaved in court, which did not serve him well with the jury in that second trial, because he was audibly making noises and huffing and puffing. I think E. Jean described him as like a hippopotamus, puffing, constantly complaining, huffing and puffing. He actually even got up and walked out of the courtroom. This is a small courtroom, so that everyone could see it. He walked out while Robbie Kaplan was giving her closing argument. I mean, just that, he was reprimanded by the judge numerous times to keep it quiet and stop reacting to things. I mean, he just can't control himself.
And what are your thoughts about the McCarthyism that led to what befell your grandparents, and that seems to be rearing its head once again? For instance, one of the hosts at a radio station has just been subpoenaed in a new witch hunt by Congress, demanding internal communications, financial records, and more for just doing journalism.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I really, I mean, I talked to my father a lot about this, who is, for your listeners, my father's the older son of Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, so he's well um, educated in McCarthyism and fascism, and we talk about this a lot, that it's much worse today than it was then. And that's saying a lot coming from someone whose parents were executed during a time like that. I mean, it is. We have felt this as a film team. Just the fear. Nobody will pick this film up. We had a hard time getting funding when Donald Trump was elected the second time. We had people who'd been with us on the film for a long time deciding to take their names off. These are, I mean, the chilling effect. And now that they're actually going after people just for doing journalism, we're really in a new dangerous era, I think.
And as follow-up to your film, what can you say about Trump's latest Supreme Court bid to get his $5.6 million plus interest back from E. Jean?
Oh, it's absurd. I mean, it's real. I mean, it's just, to me, that's just performative. I mean, but I'm not a legal expert, but I just think I mean, first of all, he has made possibly $1 trillion off of the American taxpayer. And he's complained he doesn't want $5 million that's already been sitting in escrow for 3 years to go to someone who has, won this case against him. But he never actually said, he says it's a lie that I defamed her. Well, watch the film and you can see him not only defaming her, you can see what those defamatory remarks actually did, which was activate dangerous people, followers of Donald Trump, to threaten E. Jean's life over and over again. They threatened her with rape. They threatened her life because of what Donald Trump was saying about her. And that was proved twice by 2 juries, but yet he cannot let it go. And it is just, to me, it just shows what a small man he is. It's unbelievable that, well, I shouldn't say it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, but not surprising, I guess. He So yeah, it's not going to go anywhere. The money, she won. He had every chance. He appealed. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, we're not going to hear this case. It doesn't have anything of importance to us, to the US Constitution, for us to waste our time considering this. And so that essentially ended his appeals process, and the money is E. Jean's, and it's in her bank account.
Yeah. And are you working on anything else or contemplating anything else right now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, documentary filmmakers we always have many projects percolating. We have to, because we don't know what we will find funding for or whatever. But I have a few things I'm working on. One in particular I'm very excited about is there's a book published last year by a journalist, Sophie Gilbert, called Girl on Girl. And it's a nonfiction book about how pop culture from the 90s through the 2000s turned women against themselves without us even kind of knowing. So she just breaks down all of these, through film, reality TV, pornography, music, just what has happened. So how did we end up here where this kind of trad wife trend is happening and women are saying, let's go back to the 50s, and we have men openly saying that women shouldn't even be allowed to vote. We lost Roe v. Wade. How is that connected to how pop culture has presented us? And so it's a very interesting book. So I'm actually working with a studio to develop that into a documentary series I'm excited about.
Yeah. And what would you like audiences to understand about your documentary, both supporters of E. Jean and also people angry about her?
I want people to know her. This is what the the gift and the challenge of making a documentary about someone is that we get to go beyond the news headlines that are where people are so easily dismissed, or what they say is taken out of context, or who they are is not contextualized. And you cannot watch this entire film and not feel that you have witnessed someone who grappled with her own pain and didn't want to say a word for most of her life, and then is moved to come forward, and we get to know who she really is. That's why the film is called Ask E. Jean, not just because she had an advice column called Ask E. Jean, that's convenient, but it's because I want us to ask E. Jean what happened. Ask her. And that's the message.
And what do you want the film to say to her attackers?
I'd like them to see what E. Jean endured. I like them to see that, and understand who she is. I mean, we get into her background, her life. She is not a political operative. We slowly debunk, and not directly, but by showing who E. Jean was and is, we debunk all of the things that Trump said about her in all of his defamatory comments. She is not a political operative. She was never doing anything for money. You see that very clearly. You see that she is someone who certainly was his type, to the point where he mistakes her for Marla Maples in a photo. Very important point in the case, when he's shown a photo, and Robbie Kaplan follows up very quickly with, would you say all three of your wives have been your type? And he says, oh yeah. Meanwhile, he thinks E. Jean is Marla Maples. So these are, we debunk all of that. E. Jean is not a political operative. She's also not a whack job. She's an eccentric, incredible person who, as she says on her show in the mid-90s, the Ask E. Jean show, she says, embrace your nonconformity, or that's where your power lies. So we need to understand who E. Jean is, to understand how this story that seems so crazy to a lot of people and unbelievable, that she would be in a Bergdorf Goodman dressing room and she would be telling Donald Trump that he should try on the lingerie, not her. But if you understand who she is, then you understand exactly how that could have happened. And I want his followers to open their minds to all women telling, if they have a story of assault, and try to understand, yeah, I'm sure occasionally there's someone who's making something up or whatever, but for the most part, nobody wants to go through what E. Jean just went through to tell her story. And no, I was just going to say that I think that, understanding what women actually go through when they try to file a case like this and try to take it all the way to court. It's not like it's some fun ride that they're, and they're going to, get rich at the end and everything's going to be amazing. And they went through this for that reason. It's not. It's because many women are harboring these awful traumatic experiences. And sometimes it's just important for them to tell their story. And that's how this all started. E. Jean is a writer. She was ready to tell her story. She did not have plans to even sue Donald Trump. She sued him at first because he defamed her. That's an important point. All of this is clear in the film.
Okay, thank you so much, Ivy Meeropol, for joining us on the show. And I will get the word out about Ask E. Jean.
Oh, I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
You can see him in the spotlight, grinning like a loaded gun, talking tough from gilded towers while the damage gets done. Donald Trump on the airwaves, striking matches in the dark, calling fire down like thunder, leaving ash to make his mark. He don't march, he don't bleed, he just signs and sends the fire. Calls it strength on camera while he fans the funeral pyre. And the chorus of the cowardly hums low in the hall. If no one stops the madness, then they're part of it all. If you hear the word necessary, better check who pays the cost. It's never him, it's never them, just the nameless, just the lost. That's how you spot a war criminal. Not just the hand, but the will. Not just the order shouted out, but the silence that helps kill. Every nod and every whisper, every will look the other way. That's how you spot a war criminal. They're standing in the light of day. Pete Hegzard at the ready, dressing fury up his right. Marco Rubio in circles, talking day into the night. Susie Wiles in the shadows, where the strategy is spun. And J.D. Vance plays the echo, every line becomes a drum. There's the polished talking heads who spin blood into defense. Selling ash is policy, selling fear is common sense. They'll say we didn't know, they'll say we trusted what we heard. But history don't stutter, and it hangs on every word. If your job was just to stop it, and you chose to let it ride, then the truth don't need a jury, it's already testified. That's how you spot a war criminal. Not just the spark, but the flame. Not just the face upon the screen, but the core is just the same. Every shrug and every handshake, every carefully buried lie. That's how you spot a war criminal. They're looking you straight in the eye. Mike Johnson holds the gavel, but he never brings it down. John Thune just counts the numbers while the truth gets left to drown. And the rest sit in their silence, draped in red, white, and blue. But a flag don't hide the damage when the damage cuts through. From the chambers to the cameras, from the votes that never came, you can trace the line of absence like a signature of blame. Every moment left unanswered, every duty left to rot. That's the quiet kind of guilt that time ties in a knot. You can hide behind a title, you can hide behind a flag, you can wrap it in a language meant to dull the body bag. But the ghosts don't speak in slogans, and the dead don't vote or plead. They just linger in the silence as the living plant the seed. Tick-tock goes the conscience, buried deep but never gone. And the wheel of time keeps turning long after power's done. That's how you spot a war criminal. In the orders and the hush, in the hands that sign the papers, in the ones who felt no rush to defend the broken, bleeding, to stand up and say no more. That's how you spot a war criminal. They're everywhere there's war. And one day the stage will change. No more podiums, no more praise. Just names and charges and a reckoning in time. Call it justice, call it judgment, call it truth they couldn't bend. But the road they paved with silence has a courtroom at the end. Maybe robes in The Hague, maybe iron bars instead. But no title outruns history, and no lie outlives the dead. And when the world stands witness to the crimes they can't outrun, no more hiding, no more titles, just a lifetime sentence for what they've done.
And thank you, the Resistance Network, for how to spot a war criminal, or rather, all of them. And now on Arts Express.
This is Dennis Bro for Media Watch. a regular feature of lies, more lies, and damned media lies, where we review and comment on stories in the New York Times and elsewhere in the mainstream media that illustrate the privileged status of those corporate entities inside the Washington, London, military imperial beltway, and the New York financial bubble. Our first story is the Polymarket scandal and what it is concealing. There's nothing to cheer about in the rapid rise of Polymarket, the betting service which called itself a prediction market platform and allows wagering on all kinds of political and social events. The next step in the sports gambling craze, all of course to distract participants from understanding their current devolving situation as anything but a contest they can profit from. Given the economic situation in the U.S., where in California, because of Trump and Netanyahu's war, gas prices in some areas have spiked to $7 and $8 a gallon. This amounts to fiddling while Rome burns, or while you're being evicted from your house. Polymarket is so central and mainstream now that the Financial Times is quoting it as an authority in its prediction on an Irish election. The Polymarket scandal, though, revealed by Justice Department, which recently granted Trump, his family, his businesses, and even his dog immunity from all tax fraud investigations, is that a single sergeant earned $400,000 by trading on insider information on the kidnapping of Venezuelan President Maduro. It's disgusting that a serviceman has benefited from an illegal act, but not as disgusting as what the investigation is attempting to conceal. And that is the not one-time but continual insider trading of Trump and his cronies, which has netted him and his family millions. Here are two examples. The first from Political Trade Tracker. Trump bought Intel stock 6 times in March. At the end of April, he posted that Intel stock continues to rise, and the stock jumped 3% in after-hours trading after his post. So, the deal for Trump is buy, post about how well it's doing, watch the increase, and profit. It's manipulation, though blatantly out in the open and made easier now that the SEC enforcement head, who was investigating Trump and Trump family insider trading, was likely forced to resign just before this latest manipulation, which is one of many. The second example from Max Blumenthal shows how Trump's cronies may be benefiting directly from the war. Traders placed $920 million in crude oil 70 minutes before an ex-IDF Axios reporter, Barak Ravid, the main source for press information from Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Trump, revealed a proposal that might end the war. One insider made a $120 million profit from the bet, most likely based on an anticipation the war would end and crude prices would fall. This kind of bet for this amount of money is not made without some inside knowledge. The Times, by the way, which did not take up this story, refers to Ravid simply as a well-sourced reporter. Meanwhile, the Times continues to focus not on Trump insider trading and profiting from a war he started, but on the smaller and questionable wagers on Polymarket, with its expose of the little people in betting headlined, "Dozens of Polymarket bets show signs of insider trading." We're in the middle of personal scandals and manipulation that make Teapot Dome, the greatest previous scandal in U.S. presidential history, seem like cheating on your homework. And the Times is compliantly covering not the larger but the smaller scandal, the Bernie Madoff to the gigantic Wall Street scam, which nearly crashed the economy, that was 2008. A similar attempt at a cover-up, which the Times covered diligently, was the release of the first batch of files on aliens and UFOs. The release was hilarious, with War Secretary Hegseth now hoping to make his wars intergalactic, saying the files had long fueled justified speculation that his department was participating in a historical undertaking to review tens of millions of records. This is in contrast to the Justice Department's historic failure to reveal the other half of the Epstein files, about which the majority of Americans are even more justifiably speculating. We've seen the paper of record diligently going this far and no further in its coverage of local government's baby steps in attempting to make cities habitable for its workers. In a story on New York's Mayor Mamdani's opening up a city-owned and subsidized grocery store in the South Bronx, the Times took the side of store owners and tried to pit them against the proposal. The Times campaigning for small businesses after years of cheering on the real estate developers and their politician supporters who have worked diligently to put them out of business is a bit like Amazon owner Jeff Bezos in an interview with Times columnist and CNBC reporter Andrew Ross Sorkin, weeping over the taxes nurses and queens pay, while of course belonging to a class that persistently pays little taxes on its own income. In a similar story, the Times clearly thinks Seattle's mayor, Katie Wilson, has gone too far and accuses her of taunting the rich in her claim that the threats of millionaires to leave the city in light of attacks on those with income over $1 million were overblown. The Times takes the side of Starbucks, whose attempts to unionize the mayor is supporting, and which in retaliation is opening a second major headquarters in the non-union friendly city of Nashville. Starbucks, of course, deserves all of our empathy. After all, what is a company with, for it, a slight profit downturn to do but lay off another 300 workers, making a total of 2,300 in little over a year? Mayor Wilson's unremitting cruelty in suggesting workers be able to keep their jobs and that the millionaire owners be taxed is hardly something the Times could put up with. No taunting the rich for the paper of record. Finally, the Financial Times ran a story in its Houses and Homes section recently about an architecture of hope in Syria's Aleppo, where 3 female architects are helping rebuild the city destroyed in the years of war. Architecture is what unites us, what brings us back, one of the architects says. Noting their project is restoring life, she claims, in 2 years, this place will be full of people talking to each other. For the FT, this is just one of the miracles being worked by the former al-Qaeda chief Ahmed al-Sharaa, who, when he isn't butchering all those who disagree with him, is, it seems, quite a nice guy who loves the arts. The FT ignores the fact that Aleppo was partially destroyed by so-called rebels, also made up of ISIS and al-Qaeda, or the fact that al-Sharaa has, according to the Lebanese news channel Al Mayadeen, presided over the deaths of 10,000 Syrians, apparently to get the survivors talking. And so the falsities and cover-ups continue as every day we are bombarded with new atrocities and just as quickly with attempts to conceal them. This is Dennis Bro for Lies, More Lies, and Damned Media Lies.
And that's all we have time for today on Arts Express, expression in the arts. And if you'd like to express yourself too, you can write to us at theradiogoddess@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Prairie Miller leaving the station.